What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. It is Final Four weekend. We are truly excited that we were able to have a March Madness in 2021 after it was taken from us last year because of the pandemic. It's also Easter weekend, so it's kind of the perfect storm of what we're about here at Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith. And right now, our guest joining us today is Matt Doherty. He's the former college basketball player with North Carolina, also a college basketball coach, again, with North Carolina. He was also with Notre Dame and FAU and SMU. And he also spent some time with the Atlantic 10, with ESPN and the Indiana Pacers, and currently running the Doherty Leadership Practice, along working in media and his private business. And he's an author. He's got a brand new book. It's called Rebound, From Pain to Purpose, Leadership Lessons Learned. It released March 2nd, 2021. Matt Doherty, welcome to Sports Spectrum, sir. How are you?
Good, Jason. Thanks for having me on the show.
This is great to talk to you. We're taping this, like I said, in the midst of March Madness, Final Four weekend, the Final Four upon us. So when I think of this time of year and when I think of your name, I'm old enough, I'm 47. So I remember being, we'll just say 9 years old here, watching the Final Four with my dad in 1982 and seeing North Carolina win that national championship over Georgetown, a national championship that you were a part of. So when you think of March Madness, right, the Final Four, what comes to mind for you first? Your time as a player, or is it more of your time as a coach?
Oh, gosh. Probably more as my time as a player. I was a coach. I was at Kansas for 7 years. We went to the NCAA tournament every year at Kansas. At North Carolina, I only went one out of 3 seasons. I didn't go to the NCAA tournament at Notre Dame. We were probably the first team out. Yeah. And then at Davidson, we didn't go at that time. But it's still sitting on pins and needles and the excitement of the tournament and going as a coach, the convention, the Final Four, those were magical times. It's still, March Madness doesn't disappoint when you're talking about the Loyolas of the world, the Oral Roberts of the world, Abilene Christian beating Texas. It's just perfect reality TV that draws people in that are beyond the traditional basketball fan.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, as I mentioned, the 1982 national championship. If you look over your left shoulder, for those that can see the video portion of this podcast, and we'll put it up on our YouTube channel, there's a picture. And that picture is of Michael Jordan hitting the game-winning jumper as a freshman that year against Georgetown. But you're in that picture too, aren't you? Somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Why do you think I'd put that picture up? I mean, I didn't put that picture up because Michael Jordan's in it. I put it up because I'm in it.
That's right.
I'm at the foul line, and I'm basically saying, no, don't pass it to me. I've got Patrick Ewing between me and the basket. You shoot the ball. I still am amazed, Jason, that a freshman who had upperclassmen who were great upperclassmen like Sam Perkins and James Worthy took that shot with 17 seconds to go, down one. Like, he didn't have to shoot that ball. Like, he wasn't so open that he had to shoot it. There wasn't 2 or 3 seconds on the clock where he had to shoot it.
Right.
He shot that ball like he was in the gym by himself. And the results were like he was in the gym by himself. It was a perfect swish.
I think about that game too, and there's so many memories. And even the last play when the player from Georgetown comes down and throws it to Worthy, and he's almost shocked, James Worthy. He starts dribbling, and you kind of knew at that point, you hear Billy Packer announcing that game saying, it's over, because you just knew that North Carolina was going to win that title. But that team was stacked on both sides. We mentioned, North Carolina, you mentioned Jordan, obviously, and Worthy and Perkins. You were on that team, and then you're playing against Georgetown that had Sleepy Floyd, who is a veteran, went on to have a great NBA career, and then Patrick Ewing, a Hall of Famer. So just that game specifically, I'm just a fan here asking this, I guess, more than anything. Other than maybe the Jordan shot, is there another memory that sticks out? Maybe a favorite memory from that game?
Oh gosh, James Worthy dunking on Sleepy Floyd. And I asked James that summer, um, we were having lunch, and I said, what was Sleepy thinking? And he said, in his voice, deep voice, I don't know, Matt, but he did the same thing in high school. They were both from Gastonia. And so they played against each other in the playoffs in high school. Right. And here's James Worthy, 6'9", one of the fastest, most athletic guys in the NBA in college. And he gets a steal, and Sleepy tries to go block it. And it was just posterized. That was probably a moment. And then for me, selfishly, there was a moment where Michael Jordan had the ball in the corner, was kind of getting trapped, and I flashed into the lane. And as I was catching the ball, I saw Worthy under the basket and did a quick no look to James for a dunk. So that was my highlight of the game.
Right. That's the picture you should be having up there too, behind you, right? The no.
Yeah, but it was so quick, Jason, that even the photographers couldn't capture it.
That's exactly right. Matt Doherty is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. His new book is called Rebound: From Pain to Passion, Leadership Lessons Learned. We're going to talk about the book in a second. Do you think you understood and appreciated those years at North Carolina when you were there, when you're in the middle of it? I think 19, 20, 21 years old, you appreciate on some level whenever you have success, especially when you realize that it's so hard to win a championship. And that was the only one that you guys were able to get in 82. But did you think you appreciate it as much then when you were going through it, realizing, hey, I'm playing with the greatest player of all time and some of the other greatest players of all time?
Well, at that point, I didn't think Michael was, going to be the greatest player. I knew James was one of the best. But I still realized that it was special. I mean, no doubt. I mean, I just remember being on the front cover of Sports Illustrated my sophomore year.
Yeah.
Growing up, idolizing that magazine and then seeing it on campus. I remember taking the pictures for it, obviously, and sitting on the wall between the two libraries. And somebody came up to me and said, hey, Matt, did you see the front cover of Sports Illustrated? And I looked at it and I thought it was like fake. I mean, here I am on the front cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
So, you knew you were going through some special things at a special place with a special group of people for a special coach. But then it only gets magnified because as time goes on, the success of Worthy, the success of Jordan, the success of Patrick Ewing, the continued success of Dean Smith and John Thompson.
Yeah.
And then realizing that was the first game that was on CBS. It was the first Final Four that was in a dome. Yep. And, 63,000 people were at that game. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned that Sports Illustrated cover. If I remember correctly, Jordan wasn't on that cover, was he? Because freshmen weren't allowed to be on the covers for that, weren't they?
That is correct. That is correct.
There's the cover right there. You're showing me. Yeah.
Yeah. Coach Smith wouldn't put a freshman on the cover of Sports Illustrated or any other magazine.
Even Michael Jordan, right?
Even Michael Jordan. Yeah, Michael hadn't played a game yet. He hadn't even, at that point, I don't even know if he practiced yet. So he wasn't going to do that to the other players who had already put sweat into the program.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to earn your stripes kind of scenario as a coach. Looking at a freshman, you're saying, even it's Michael Jordan, a highly touted freshman, you got to earn your stripes. That isn't the way it is today, obviously, but back then, that was you. Even those kind of players, those highly touted players, had to earn their stripes.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think it's the way it should be. I mean,
yeah,
all it does is set up for some dysfunction. If you're going to have a freshman on there, put the whole team on there. Or put the coach on there.
Yeah.
But you're just setting yourself up for jealousies. I mean, Felipe Lopez was on the front cover of Sports Illustrated at St. John's. Yep. Now, half the audience here 75% of the audience probably doesn't know who Felipe Lopez is. And that's sad. I recruited Felipe to Kansas. He was a great, great talent. But the expectations and the pressure put on him by being on the front cover of a Sports Illustrated before even playing a game is tough. The only guy that lived up to that so far is probably LeBron James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they crowned him at 17 years old as the future of basketball, and turned out pretty well for him. We mentioned Michael Jordan. We saw the documentary last year. That was probably the best thing about the pandemic, was that we could sit down and watch television like we used to with this Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. You were around for all 3 years of his college career. He wrote the foreword to this new book, Rebound. Can you share just your favorite Michael story with us? It doesn't even have to be during your time at North Carolina, or it could be, but just a fun Michael Jordan story for us.
Well, I think one that I like to tell is we were on a road trip, I think his sophomore year maybe, and we're shooting pool in Charlottesville in our hotel. And he's a very competitive guy. And I beat him in pool, and he looks at the table, and you can see the anger coming over his face. And he takes the pool cue and throws it on the table and says, "This table's not even regulation." And he walks out of the room. He doesn't want to admit to defeat.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I like to beat him in certain things that I could beat him. I beat him playing golf one time. I was coaching in North Carolina. He was in town, and we played at this club in Durham, Trayburn, it was called. And he hadn't been there in like years, but he has the locker, and he opens up the locker, and, stuff comes out that's, now outdated, maybe stale cigars and some old gloves. And so we play, and I topped my first drive, and we hadn't set the bet yet. So then we set the strokes, and then I clipped him for $60. Afterwards, I asked him if he would sign the bills, and he wasn't going to sign the bill.
I'm imagining there was some profane language and something to the effect of "Get out of here, Doherty."
Yeah. One other time, I was in Chicago. I was coaching at Kansas, and for some reason, I felt like his career was kind of winding down, and I said, I want to get out there and see him. So I flew out. He had his buddy pick me up.
Yeah.
Met him at the practice facility. He drove me home. We hung out, had pregame meal, went to the game. The next day, I was staying at a hotel. He let me use one of his cars. He said, meet me at the house at 7 or 8. At 8, we'll play golf all day. And I think we teed off at 9 o'clock and rolled in our last putts at 8.
Wow.
We played 54 holes of golf.
Oh my goodness.
54 holes of golf the day after he closed out the Utah Jazz in a playoff game.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Was that the year? This had to be the year before he retired, I'm assuming.
I forget.
Because everybody was talking about retirement. And if you watched the Jordan documentary, you saw that after he beat Utah, he knew this might be it. But the fact that you're playing golf with this guy the day after, how many holes again? 54, you said?
Three rounds of golf. I mean, we didn't stop to get some drinks and peanuts.
Wow.
It was unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a memory. Did you win? How'd you do?
I don't know. I just knew I was exhausted. On the last 9, I remember bringing the club back, thought I was going to fall over. And we literally rolled our last putts in as the sun was going down.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a memory. What an incredible memory.
Yeah.
Matt Doherty is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. His new book is called Rebound: From Pain to Passion, Leadership Lessons Learned. And I want to get into the book, Matt. Tell us about it, and maybe highlight that subtitle for us a little bit and the meaning behind From Pain to Passion and why you decided to write the book.
Well, I was the head coach at Notre Dame, was there one year. We had a good year. And then Bill Guthridge retired at North Carolina. Everyone assumed that Roy Williams was going to take the job. He did not. He stayed at Kansas. And I was recruited to take the job by Dean Smith and Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And I took it. In my first year, we were ranked #1 in the country, and I was voted AP Coach of the Year. And then 2 years later, I was forced to resign. And I was forced to resign in a very public manner, as you would assume at a place like North Carolina. And my leadership was questioned. So I went from being the National Coach of the Year to 2 years later being forced to resign, and my name dragged through the mud a little bit. So that was the pain of losing my job, and then rebounding from that and studying leadership, where that was the thing that I was questioned about. I then embraced, and that became my passion, to study leadership. And the more I studied, the more I wanted to study more. And I became an executive coach. And that's what I do now, is teach leadership development. So, again, rebounding from failure, the pain of losing my job, and questioning my leadership, to leadership becoming my passion. That's the subtitle.
Yeah, and leadership is something I'm very passionate about too. And when I saw the title of your book, and I talked about leadership lessons, it's very similar to what I wrote about in my book. And I was really fascinated by some of the lessons.
Whoa, Jason.
Yes, sir, Matt.
Is this a podcast about your book or my book? I mean, I told you before that you can't overplug my book, and you just did. Oh my goodness!
All right, people, go get Matt's book, Rebound.
Oh my goodness!
Passion.
Look at the you have your book placed in the background. My book's nowhere to be seen.
Oh, I have your book. I read the
you're
PDF
killing me,
version,
Jason.
the digital version of it, Matt.
Oh, you're killing me, Jason. I mean, it was not. You seem like a nice guy.
Oh.
The whole religion thing, and all of a sudden, boom! This is a plug for Jason's book. Oh.
Well,
Okay,
here's what I didn't say, the title of my book, but I'm going to say the title of your book again, Rebound. People need to go get it. But honestly, in all seriousness, leadership lessons learned. So I'm fascinated because I think there's a lesson to learn in our daily life from a spiritual perspective with our faith, but from a leadership perspective as well. In fact, I think Christ is the greatest leader maybe that had ever walked this earth. Tell me some leadership lessons that you learned, a specific lesson.
Well, one that I do, as a friend of mine talks about, dropping breadcrumbs of Jesus, of Christianity in the book, because I do like to think that, I hope I'm here more than just as a basketball coach. And, I am a Christian, and
Yeah.
I used to say I'm not the best Christian in the world. My buddy who went to seminary said, listen, you're either a Christian or you're not. There's no degrees of Christianity, because, we're all flawed, right?
That's right.
So I felt better about myself after he told me that. I think failure normally brings people closer to God.
Yeah.
When somebody's getting ready to drive off the side of a road, I think even an atheist would say, oh, God, save me.
Yeah.
Right? When people are having great success, they get intoxicated with it, and they think it's all about them. And it's very few that show gratitude towards God. So it's nice when an athlete or whoever achieves success and praises God for the blessings that were bestowed on them. And so when I lost my job at North Carolina, I like to think that I became closer to God, because it's like, okay, God, I'm not in control. I thought I was, but okay, you came down and smacked me in the back of the head and said, too fast, too much, settle down. And like, all right, you got my attention. And I think the humility, being humbled, and then the Bible has so many lessons, as you touched on. My daughter was in a play, like when fourth grade, Joseph and the Technicolor
Dream coat.
suit. Was that
The dream coat, right?
dream coat? The dream coat, yes.
Yeah.
And what happened to Joseph, got sold into slavery by his brothers, then ended up basically being one of the most powerful rulers, in the land, and then forgiving his brothers.
That's right.
I mean, that's real and powerful. And then, Jesus, like I talk about in my book about forgiveness, and,
Yes.
and not only forgiving others, but forgiving yourself, which is hard to do. It's very hard to forgive others. I think forgiveness is the hardest thing to do in the Bible.
Yep.
But it's all over the Bible. And so if Jesus could forgive the people that crucified him while he's on the cross, I could forgive people that I think may have wronged me. I don't know if they wronged me, but I think they wronged me. I can forgive those people. And forgiveness is really the most selfish thing you could do, because it's the most freeing thing we can do.
Do you see that as a difficult thing coming from the athletic world, right? And I remember watching various documentaries, not just the Jordan documentary, where people hold grudges towards things. They remember when somebody wronged them in 1982, right? And it's 2020 or 2021, and they're still thinking about it and talking about it, and it still irks them. And I think that's a problem with society, that we are not able to, I don't want to say forget, because you don't forget, but to be able to move forward, to be able to be free, like you said. Is that something common that you see, that a lot, maybe even yourself, kind of holding grudges, for the people who did you wrong on your journey? That's a hard thing, right?
Well, it is a hard thing. And I think that, but like I said, it's the most selfish thing you could do, because once you forgive other people, that they're not renting space in your head. Someone once said, revenge, it's like, bitterness is like, you get mad, you get angry at somebody. It's like you drink the poison hoping they die.
Yes.
They don't even know maybe that they're renting space in your head. So it's really the most selfish thing we could do, is to forgive others, because it frees us up to live. And the challenging part, I think, as an athlete, as a male, or anybody that's competitive, is, we're in the game of comparisons, right? I'm taller than you, I'm faster than you, I'm tougher than you, I'm better than you. But in the real world, in life, comparison games are the work of the devil. And, so if you're really always measuring yourself up to the other person, your neighbor, keeping up with the Joneses, you'll live a miserable life. It's hard to stop, though. It's hard. And I think that's problem with especially young people and social media, because they see so many comparisons on social media of these people living these highlight film lives or days, and we know we're not.
Right.
And so that leads to really some depression. And I've told people, don't compare your everyday to someone's highlight film.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't do that, because most people's highlight film consists of the everyday struggles that you and I are thinking about and looking at and probably comparing to. That's the downtrodden side, I guess, of social media. I love social media. I love the way to connect with others, the way to have kind of a little small community when you're watching an event. But the comparison, it's really, really hard, especially with these young kids. And everything is about the highlight now, especially young athletes. I worry so much about these young kids that are coming up that, are being, like you kind of said, what happened with Felipe Lopez. That's not the Sports Illustrated that they're looking to get on the cover now. They're just trying to get retweeted or get, 1 million likes on social media. And then they go into college, and if they only play a little bit or average 4 points, even if their team wins, they look at themselves as failures.
Yep.
It's really a bad area, I think, that we're headed towards.
Yeah, well, it all started with you, Jason, because you started at ESPN.
Yeah.
You're the ones that started the highlights.
That's true.
Oh.
That's true. Well, I don't blame
tweeting.
ESPN, but you're true. You're right, though, because ESPN brought, you remember this in 2003. I think it was '03 or '02. Like Jay Billis and Dick Vitale did a LeBron James high school game. Remember that game?
Yeah, I felt very uneasy about that.
Right. And it was treated like it was the NBA finals.
Yeah,
If you
it
remember
was
the
big
broadcast.
time. Yeah, that was a weird time. I was recruiting LeBron as a sophomore in high school, and then he got so, he was too good. I wasn't going to waste my time. I knew he was going to go pro.
Yeah.
But that was a weird feeling. But now it's commonplace that games are on TV. But
it was different. It was just putting guys on. And listen, LeBron's handled it maybe more as good as anybody, if not as the best than anybody I've ever seen in terms
I
of,
agree. I agree.
hype and pressure and all that, and just the media on him since he was 15. But that was just a little taste. Imagine if there was social media during that time, as he's coming up. And that's kind of what we're seeing now is these kids who are 14, 15, 16 that have
like Zion Williamson.
Zion, right?
Yep.
Exactly. It was almost a caricature of himself that by the time he gets to the NBA, if he doesn't average 30 a game and do what LeBron did, he's a failure.
Exactly right. That's hard, man. Hard life to live.
Very tough, very tough. But anyways, that's the world that we're in, I guess. Matt Doherty is our guest on Sports Spectrum. Again, his book, Rebound, From Pain to Passion, Leadership Lessons Learned. It released on March 2nd. It's available everywhere books are found. I want to dive into your faith in the last few minutes that we have here just a little bit. I don't think we really talked deep into where that faith came from. You said during that tough time, when you lost your job, it brought you closer to God, but is that where it started for you? Or was there a sort of a process of your faith in the Lord and kind of how that's evolved over the years?
Well, I grew up Irish Catholic on Long Island. I was an altar boy in 4th grade. My mother thought I was going to be a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, altar boys make tips at weddings and funerals. And that really disheartened my mother. Yeah. So fast forward 1999, I'm announced as the head coach at Notre Dame. Yeah. And I'm walking on campus after the press conference, so my parents are there. And my mother pulls my arm and pulls me close. So she's walking towards the basilica and she says, Matthew, if you couldn't be a Catholic priest, being the head coach at Notre Dame's a close second. Yeah, true story.
That's amazing.
So, God has always been a big part in my life. But I think as you grow, you kind of take different paths. At least that's what happened to me. I went to school in North Carolina, and I didn't go to church as much. And then when I got married, a little bit more. And then when I had children, a little bit more. And then, you deal with some loss, and my faith deepened. And I think it brought me closer to God. My daughter is a Christian. My wife is. My son is. My daughter's really into the Bible, as my wife is. And, I just like to learn. I need to read more. But Proverbs really gets me. I just think that there's so much wisdom in the Bible, and yes. It's, over 2,000 years old. And yet so many things are so relevant to today that really is incredible. And I just think that we as a country, as a people, as a world, need a moral compass, and there's no better tool than the Bible. And it just concerns me as people get farther and farther away from the Lord.
Yeah. That moral compass is such an important thing that you kind of alluded to it early on when you said, hey, even an atheist probably is crying out to God if they're going off a cliff. And so I think there's a God-given sort of spiritual side to all of us that's in there that has this sort of innate connection with a higher power or with a creator. So that's really well said the way you said that. So as you think about your book, Lessons Learned, Leadership Lessons Learned, the easy answer to me is probably Michael Jordan, before I even asked the question. But who do you consider the greatest leader that you've been around? Maybe, and if it is Jordan, why him? But I shouldn't put words in your mouth. But who is the greatest leader you've been around?
Well, I think the greatest leader I was around was Dean Smith.
Dean Smith, yeah.
I mean, he had to lead our basketball team, lead his staff, lead, an institution, and he was really a servant leader, Jason.
Yeah.
I tell this story often, and you may have heard it, but after he died, about a month or two later, every former player got a letter from his estate with a check for $200 in it, saying thank you, basically, for what you did for me and the program, and here's $200. Take your family out to dinner on me.
Incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To think that and to put that into play. Obviously, you don't just do that, the day before. Like, that's thought out, well thought out. And that's the mindset. What made him such a great leader? The servant leadership was great, but describe his leadership style, like as a guy who played under him and certainly knew him for many years.
I think he got people to understand their roles and buy into their roles. He would do it in a positive way. I think there wasn't. He uses a phrase that I use: praise the actions you want repeated. I think he was very good at motivating people to do things that were, best for the organization and ultimately best for them. Like I scored a lot in high school. I was an All-American, but so was everybody else on the team. But for our team to be successful, I needed to play a certain role. And he knew that. And he was able to convince me that was a significant role for the team and how the team would benefit from that. And then ultimately, I knew how I would benefit. I'd play a lot. Just appreciated everyone, made sure everyone felt like they were appreciated. Was very just consistent with it, and thus created a loyalty over spanning 35, 36 years that, former players loved them.
And even like today, when you think about the legacy and Roy Williams, coach in North Carolina, who was an assistant there, you were the coach before Roy, you played for him. There was just this consistent family type situation. Bill Guthridge, I think, was the one who replaced Dean Smith. So there's never been it's always been in the family, in the way North Carolina has led, especially from their basketball program.
Yeah, no. So his leadership, and just a personal sacrifice, like he'd be willing to take a loss if it would to benefit a player.
Yeah.
And you hear stories about players who are going through a hard time and coach played them and they may have lost the game, but he didn't want to, bench the player or, he did what was best for the players, even if it meant losing a game. And that, again, is one of the reasons so many players really love him.
He is Matt Doherty. Matt, as we wind down, the last question I want to ask you is a question we ask all of our guests here on the show. It could be as deep as you want to go or as very simple as you want to go, but God teaches us lessons. You talk about leadership lessons. God teaches us lessons every day on our journey. What's the Lord been showing you and teaching you in this season of life that you're in, especially when you think about the last year and all that took place with the pandemic and everything else happening in the climate that we live in? What's the great lesson the Lord has shown you and taught you recently?
Whoa. I think one, to appreciate what we have.
Yeah.
Like my wife and I have felt blessed over the last year to have our 23-year-old son and 21-year-old daughter at home and having family meals. Old school, phones are down, engaging in conversation and just having a family meal. And then professionally, I've looked at coaching jobs and if a coaching job opened up, I'd still consider it as That's my drug. But I think trust the closed door. That's something that I've really adopted for probably the last several years of, just because you want it and you think it's good for you, and you don't get it, you got to trust that God's got this. Like, God's got this. And I remember there were some jobs that I wanted and didn't get. And then a year or 2 or 3 later, something bad happened at that program. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, God was really kind of looking out for me. I could have been in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Or there was a job a couple of years ago that I thought I deserved and was more than qualified to get, and I didn't get it. And as soon as I got word I didn't get it, I wheeled around, got on my knees, and thanked God for closing the door. And I think that's faith, right?
Yes.
That's faith, that we want to drive the bus, but we're not driving the bus. We're a passenger on his bus, and he's going to drop us off at this bus stop that he wants us to drop us off at. Until then, get in the back, shut your mouth, and ride the bus.
I call that bloom where you're planted, right? Like, until
Yes.
you're called to the next place, you're to bloom right where you are.
Yeah.
It's really good. Trust the closed door. That's awesome.
Yeah. Trust the closed door. I think that's a big thing. And that gives you peace. We all want peace, right? But we try to obtain peace through, oh man, if I had this money or I had this job or I had this car, that would be like, I get peace. But like you said, bloom where you are.
Bloom where you're planted.
Bloom where you planted. Like, that's peace. That's okay. Acceptance. That doesn't mean you settle and don't strive.
That's right.
You can still bloom, as you say. But sometimes, the older I get, the more I probably appreciate my dad. People love my dad and my parents, and he loved people. He just loved his life. And, there are things that he and I would talk about that, he wished he did or wish he had, but he was at peace, and I think trusting that closed door, blooming where you're planted. That's a quote that I'll steal from you, Jason. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. He is Matt Doherty, NCAA basketball champion with North Carolina as a player, was drafted in the NBA, head coaching career with Notre Dame, North Carolina, FAU, and SMU. He was the AP Coach of the Year in 2001, and now he's got a new book, Rebound: From Pain to Passion, Leadership Lessons Learned. It released back on March 2nd. It is Final Four weekend. It's Easter weekend. And Matt, we're grateful that you shared your story with us. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon, hopefully.
Jason, it's my pleasure. Thank you, and good luck to your book.
Thank you, buddy.
Yep.
And